Okay. Steven.
Simon. Jane. Welcome to the Bucket episode 4. All right.
Oh my goodness.
All right. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Afternoon. Good afternoon. Oh, right. Yeah. It's we're a worldwide consortium, aren't we? Good as anything, whatever you are. Good evening. For somebody, I bet it's 2:00 in the morning. And not today, 5 days from now or something. They'll be like, man, this weekend was awesome. And we're like, we don't know what this weekend's going to be yet.
Chances are, on the probability scale somewhere, if somebody will watch it at 2 a.m., maybe in like a million years from now.
Yeah.
Ooh, that touches on a subject I want to talk about later. But before we get to that, I noticed we've got 2 new subscribers on the YouTube channel this week. Thank you. Thank you to all of our subscribers. And I think we have 3 more followers on the Twitters, X, whatever. And I think, may as well, I was going to ask you guys, whatever, we'll talk about this anyway. So Blue Sky, I never heard of Blue Sky before today. I mean,
it's a bit cloudy, honestly.
There's a System of a Down song with the lyrics, Blue Skies, for all those system fans. I don't know how to go about, or if we should consider, it seems like the Laravel community is kind of, everybody's jumping over there. I joined in the first day, I got like 100 followers or something, which is crazy. But
that's great.
I think there's like a list of people that are like from Justin Jackson or something, and if you're on that list, and people just like follow everybody, and I think that's why. But should we make the Bucket account over there, you think?
Well, why not?
Yeah,
let's do it.
Let's do it. All right, so check us out on Blue Sky and X and YouTube, and follow us everywhere.
I was about to say, pretty soon I'm going to need like a, not meta as in Facebook, but a meta just social platform aggregator.
A social? Did you say social?
Did I say social? Social. To just bring in all of these different things. There's so many to keep track of now. And whatever.
We use a marketing AI assistant or something to help with this.
Here we go again.
Yep. It's coming. Well, let's do a little catch up. Steven, you were out last week. Why? Where the HE double hockey sticks were you? What was going on?
Happy to be back. So my family and I were traveling down to Florida last week. We did about a week in Disney World, which actually reminds me, I need to do a little correction for the thousands of our listeners that are Disney fans. We had a little fact oopsie, I think, in the episode with you guys last week. So Disneyland.
We love a fact oopsie.
We love a fact oopsie. So Disneyland was the first park.
Oh.
And that was the one that Walt Disney like really spearheaded. And then that was in the 1950s. And then in the like mid 1960s, like 64, the company acquired the land in Florida. And then in 65, they were breaking ground. But Walt Disney died, I think in 1965. And Roy, his brother, who became CEO and chairman, like officially named it Walt Disney World. And so it was the second park. But it's easy to remember which of those it is, because Walt Disney World are the multiple parks, and then Disneyland is just the one park in California.
Wow.
So there you go.
Thank you.
Shane, you've got to hang up your walking Wikipedia moniker. That doesn't anymore.
I'm just happy nobody corrected me before Steven. It would have been weird if all these people are like, you Disney hater or something.
You got it wrong, man.
You're wrong.
Yeah. But anyways, The reason I know all of that is because,
You just
as I
read a wiki.
mentioned in whatever episode it was, I'm not like the biggest Disney theme park fan. It was a much more enjoyable experience last
Could have
week
fooled us.
because my little guy Oliver had a lot more fun, and so we had a good experience. But
Yeah,
one thing
nice.
I really appreciate about Disney as a corporation is their Imagineering department. And so they have done some like documentaries that are available on Disney Plus that my wife and I have been watching that covers everything from ride and land design to history of Walt Disney and the parks and stuff like that. And so that's been really super interesting. And as a mechanical engineer myself, it's really cool to see how much innovation they push through things they design for the parks, rides, etc., even down to like restaurants. So anyway, that part of Disney I actually really, really like. So last week was good.
You just opened a huge can, though, and we'll get to it later. But what do you mean you're a mechanical engineer?
Oh, I mean that's my formal education. Like
Steven, come on, man.
yeah, man. My before I was a developer, I went to school for mechanical engineering and did product design and yeah.
We should collaborate on something sometime.
Let's do it.
Wait, have you worked on any like consumer products that are out there now?
If you happen to own a motorcycle, then probably.
Go on. So,
I thought when you were talking about the motorcycle business before, that was like you were there in a software capacity.
That's what I thought too. Yeah.
Wow. No. Okay.
No. I was the first external hire, and for the founder Bart, and he was doing it with his now wife at the time. Her name is Kim. I hope they don't mind me name dropping like this, but anyways, yeah. So I was like the first hire. I came on just as an intern while I was still in school, and then I helped them for 6 years or something like that, and we just developed a whole bunch of really cool sport bike accessories during that time. And by the end, I was a little bit more on the running the business side of things than developing products, which is what Bart, the founder, is extremely good at. That was his like true craft. He was an excellent engineer and very creative and really, really good at designing products. Going on a little bit of a tangent here, but anyway, yeah. So I was a mechanical engineer and then became self-taught programmer. So here we are today.
Wow.
Cool stuff. But the trip was good.
I want to know about Disney.
Started out,
we'll come back to that.
The kids did a fantastic job. My kids are only 3 roughly and 8 months, and they did really good with completely blowing up their schedule. We were out until like 10:30, 11 on a lot of nights, and then back up early, and they did very well. And so it was a good time. And
how was your son's hand?
Oh, it was okay. Yeah. So his hand got crushed in a door before we left. Not a fun experience.
Like 2 days
the
before.
hinge side of a door. So like worst possible location, but it was okay. Nothing's broken. And so great way to kick off the week.
Yep.
But yeah, flights were good. Going down was a little bit rough. For some reason, we couldn't get Liam, our little guy, to fall asleep. And then I think his ears started hurting with the pressure change because he just went full-blown crying for a little while. And so once we got through that, then everything was okay. And yeah,
how many days were you there total?
We flew Sunday to Sunday.
Nice. Oh, good.
So we were in Florida a full week, and then we were in Disney Tuesday afternoon until Friday evening. So
nice.
It was a full trip. It was one of those where you get home and you're exhausted from vacationing, so you need a vacation from your vacation, because we were just going ham from 7:30 in the morning until 11:30 at night, like every day, and it's exhausting, but it was a good time. So
did you fly, and if so, did you fly Allegiant?
We did fly. We did fly Allegiant. We went
Nice.
from Concord to Sanford.
Yep.
Concord is the smallest commercial airport I've ever been through. It's like very, very small, which was nice, especially when you have kids, because then security and luggage check-in, everybody is much more accommodating, and it's not this horde of people trying to get through thousands an hour. It's much more personal, and the waiting terminal is just one large room, so it's a little bit easier to just let Ollie kind of look at the windows, and the plane is right there on the tarmac. There's not even a like moving gate and stuff like that.
So for those that don't know, Allegiant Air, and I always ask this for certain trips that I know that they fly to. It's a smaller airline that is not operating out of every airport. It's not I mean, it's very few airports that they operate out of. A couple dozen, I would say, in the U.S. But the tickets are super cheap, like less than $100 each way per person, almost always. In fact, my brother flew once from Asheville to Florida. It was $38 round trip, is what he paid. Now I think he had to pay extra for a bag, and he skipped the seat selection because it was just himself, but it was like nothing. So I know that they fly from Concord, which I fly out of often enough. That's one of the airports I fly from as a private pilot. So I'm very familiar with all the security and all that that goes on there. But if you can fly Allegiant, if you're just looking for a trip, I recommend highly to just look at AllegiantAir.com. And this is not a paid anything. It's just words of wisdom. Save some money.
Yeah, they're a decent regional carrier. They do get you a lot on bags. So I think we spent more on seat selection and bags than the actual ticket cost, which
and they only fly to those cities airline on certain days too. So it's like, like I was looking at one from Asheville to Denver, which you can't fly from Asheville right now anyway, but it was like, but they're all booked, first of all, until February, but they only fly on Tuesdays and come back Thursdays or something like that. So it's very limited in what you can do, but if it can work, then take a look. You can save some cash.
Yeah, for sure. But that was my trip. Good time.
Nice.
Very good. You going again?
No time soon.
All right. It's not in the books yet.
No. Right. Really, really expensive. I can only afford $19 Mickey waffles so many times.
Wow. This is the thing, though, right?
American dollars. So
you're trapped, right? So you gotta just take what they give you.
Yeah, boy. Okay, little business tidbit here. Chef Mickey's in the Contemporary Hotel. It's a character breakfast, so it's a buffet. And while you're eating, the famous Disney characters are walking around and you get to do pictures. That place is making money hand over fist. So the kids were free because Ollie is under 3. So just Alyssa and I had to pay for the buffet. I think she got a Bellini or whatever. So there was, $10 with a little bit of an alcohol champagne charge. But otherwise, it was just the buffet. And I think we walked out of there after tax and gratuity at like $160 for the two of us.
And that was just breakfast.
And that was a very standard buffet breakfast. Nothing special.
But don't you feel honored that you got to do that at Disney?
I know.
Think of the children.
We were in and out of there in less than an hour. I probably ate $4 worth of food. And it was $160. And I mean, it's a huge restaurant. I mean, they're probably, my goodness, they're probably doing close to like $100,000 a day on busy resort days. It's just good business model. Good business model.
You got to think, you didn't pay $160 for breakfast. You paid $160 to tell everybody that you paid $160 for breakfast.
I spent $160 on breakfast to get the 3 photos of Ollie looking happy, giving Minnie a hug. Like, that's what you're paying for. So
I'm just going to do that at my next brunch, Saturday brunch. It's going to be like $30 worth of food, but I'm going to tell everyone that I spent $200 equivalent to 200. I'm just going to drop like a massive tip and just say it. Yeah, I spent loads of money. and it was mediocre. You know, I wasn't satisfied.
Yeah. It's an idea.
Yeah,
actually.
so that doesn't really work for me as a generalized business, because I think the appeal of it is the characters, for one, right? So the kids are like, mommy, look, there's Mickey Mouse or whatever while I'm eating breakfast. So you're kind of like, you're a victim. It's just harsh, but you're a victim of your own children and their awareness of these characters. And maybe Mickey Mouse isn't relevant anymore.
You see how much you really love your kids.
Exactly.
Or don't.
You're not giving your children breakfast but they go free. Yeah. No, they don't. And so it's like oh gosh, what's the word? Basically just the fact that they've built up these franchises, over the years that people want to go and see. Like, I can imagine you trying to start a similar business and you just got these random characters that nobody knows.
No. I'm not saying you cannot extrapolate this to any other. I'm saying specifically Disney is brilliant for having this IP, these assets that the kids want to go to. And they have clearly found pricing that is, to me, extreme. And yet we are still willing to do it so that you can get those photos of your kids meeting Mickey, Minnie, Goofy, Pluto, etc., like that they've seen on the screen all this time. And then all of a sudden, oh my goodness, they're really here. And it's, that's what you're paying for. And it's, anyways, I'm saying specifically for Disney.
Quick, while we're on the subject of Disney, for my dad, was there any sign of flooding damage to the castle?
None.
Dad, you hear that?
None.
Check your sources, bud.
Our whole time there, the only thing that we saw that would have made you think, they had a little bit of rain here recently, was some water in the low areas where you drive. So the golf course, for example, that's right off the lagoon at Magic Kingdom, the Grand Floridian Resort, etc. The ponds had a lot more water in them than you would normally see. And there was some standing water near the road. But other than that, like the resorts, the parks, no. You would have had no idea that they had a hurricane a week before.
Well, wow.
So
Facebook was wrong.
No.
You heard it right from the horse's mouth, which probably is another character at Disney that... Never mind. There's probably a joke there. Simon, how was your week? How you doing?
Yeah, it's been good. What's then? Probably the most... Well, I actually have some news for the podcast for you guys about the podcast. Somebody, a listener, a friend of the show, has basically watched all episodes, caught up to date, said they really enjoyed it. So let me read this message out to you, because I think it's very nice.
What?
Oh, sweet.
He sent me a direct message. He said, I watched the latest episode of The Bucket. I'm really enjoying. When's the next one? And then proceeded to watch all of the historical ones. So, they spent, 3 hours, nearly 4 hours watching us yak.
That's crazy.
Said, amazing stuff. I think this is the first developers podcast I've listened to entirely. It's easy to follow and has less jargon.
Has less what?
Jargon.
Good.
That was from Tendai in Zimbabwe.
Oh, sweet.
Wow. Holy moly.
International
That's
listener.
cool. That's super cool.
That is really
nice.
cool.
Well, thank you for the kind words.
Thank you. And you know what? Let's open that up to, we like hearing that, and I would have no problem reading more of these. So if you have any even harsh words, we'll take those too. Probably won't read them though, publicly, but no, we might. Who knows?
That should be a
what
segment.
You think.
We'll combine the actual good praise with some roasts. So if you want to roast us, write in.
Great idea.
And maybe we'll pick one a week to self roast ourselves.
Yeah, really. No, I mean, comment,
actually
like,
pretty
subscribe.
funny.
It's more than that. I like. There's several podcasts I listen to that they strongly encourage this, and I've written in a couple times, and it takes them. They have like backlogs, right? So it takes months before they ever get to you, but um, it's always cool to just hear your feedback actually works and it counts, and yeah, we sure encourage that. I mean, we're just starting here. This is episode 4, right? It's gonna get bigger. We're gonna keep going. There's no plans to stop. So chime in.
I always loved like getting onto the radio, you know, like with those call-in shows, or maybe it was a quiz or something, or just something stupid, you know, like take part in some silly thing and then choose a song. And then when they, you know, they record it and then they play it back in a segment later on, it's like, oh, listen at 2 p.m. You know, your thing's going to be on after lunch or whatever. And it's like, oh, I was on the radio.
Mm-hmm. You ever win
It's
anything?
No.
Mm.
No, the quiz ones, but like the prize things, I would never get selected for those. It was only the boring interviews and the choose a song.
I did one time. Maybe a couple times. I think it was just one time. I won tickets to a band called Incubus. It's a rock band. This is back in 2009. And they called, like, it was like 2 or 3 weeks before the show. They said, I called in, I was caller number whatever. I won the tickets. I'm like, holy crap, you know. And then they called like 2 days before the show and they said, hey, Shane. I'm like, yeah. They're like, this is so and so from the radio. Like, we're there's nothing changed with your tickets, but we also drew your name for a meet and greet and a free night in the hotel across the street from the venue the day of. So we got to meet the band, got their autographs, and stayed in the hotel for free the night of the show. So,
Dude, that's sick.
Sweet.
yep, it was pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
Man, being lucky is such a great thing. Sorry, what were you going to say?
Hell
Simon?
yeah.
No, I was thinking, like, you should play poker more often, like
Yeah,
legit.
maybe.
I remembered now you were saying that I did get something. It wasn't really winning a prize, but they kind of just did it for people who came onto a show. It was Kerrang. You know, Kerrang Radio it was a thing in the UK. I don't know if they did a similar thing in the US, but and they sent me for a night out, Hard Rock Cafe, which was it was like on a weird weeknight, and there was nobody there. And I just had free drinks for the night. It was like, cool.
Nice.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
It's not as good as yours.
What? Who's comparing? We're all here today, right? Didn't change my
that's
life
true.
that drastically.
Mm.
So
It did change.
My wife won our pre-wedding honeymoon at a travel conference.
honeymoon,
guess-
Pre-wedding
before the
honeymoon.
Yeah. So she was still.
Who did she go with?
Isn't that just called a trip?
Thanks. Well, we knew we weren't going to be able to do a proper honeymoon, because she was finishing up grad school and she literally had finals the Monday or Tuesday after our wedding. But she was also doing some like travel agency stuff on the side at the time. And she was going down to some sort of a conference, and they were running a trivia contest between all of the tables that were at this conference. And long story short, her table did really well. And so we got 2 free tickets for a Viking river cruise in Europe. And that's what we did the August before we got married in December. And
So we should play poker, but not against each other.
Sure. Yeah. But that was awesome.
Did you have to go
That
as
was
Vikings?
No.
You have to what? What was that?
Did you have to go as Vikings? Because he said it was a Viking river cruise.
They came back as Vikings.
Yeah. No, that was an amazing trip. So really, really cool that we got to win that and go on it. So
Do you know where the word honeymoon came from? I learned this the other day.
no.
There's something to do with drinking, isn't it?
It does. So I guess it was like mead. They used to drink mead for a full month, a moon cycle. So mead is an alcoholic beverage made from honey. And so they would drink for their honeymoon was the month after marriage. They would celebrate by drinking mead for a month.
Wow.
Yeah.
And
checks out,
nothing
too.
else.
I asked AI. It checks out.
Very
I checked on
interesting.
Facebook.
And Stephen, you're wrong. The castle was flooded, so
Oh, well, they did a fantastic job at
renovating.
getting it all ship
They're
shape
quick.
for our trip. Because man, I wouldn't have been able to know. So something I do want to hear about from Simon. What in the world is up with your sleep schedule?
What? That's so left field. Why do you ask that question, Mr. Fox?
Because I just think you're crazy. You're like, you've been sick for the last couple of weeks, and then Shane and I are East Coast US. Simon is Canary Islands, I think 5 or 6 hours ahead of us.
5 hours.
It'll be 9:30 p.m. our time, so
Yep.
2:30 your time, and you're hitting us up on Telegram, and I'm like, dude, get some sleep.
I can't sleep
And then I'll
very
get
well when I'm not well.
I'll get another notification at 3:30 a.m. my time. So what is that? 8:30 your time. Then you're already up. Do it. And I'm like, man.
Maybe I just don't ever sleep.
So his code name for this little group is the Vampire, and you're living up to it.
The Hampire.
The Hampire. Ooh, I like that.
Ooh, that's ridiculous.
But yeah, like, I mean, is that like your normal? Have you always been a night owl or what? Like what?
Yeah, I am a night owl, but I don't normally stay up till like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning and then get up again at like 8. Whatever. Certainly not now. I'm pushing 40, so gotta watch out, otherwise I'll keel over.
Dude, it catches up. I'll be 42 in a couple months, and I don't feel like I did at 38. It's true.
I'm 39 in 2 months.
When's your birthday?
December.
December what?
24th.
I'm the 18th. Dude, we're like
No. My wife is the 19th, and loads of our friends are like that time in December as well. It's crazy.
My brother's is the 6th. My son's the 29th. My stepdaughter is the same as mine. But who cares about
now?
them?
I've got to go and change all of my security questions on all of the. He knows. Damn it. Yeah. So wait, what? Yeah, I don't normally stay up too late, but when I'm not well, sleep pattern just gets really affected, and then I end up on my phone. It's just classic, like nothing to do. The world is asleep pretty much from my perspective at that point in time. Especially if it's like evening your time, everybody's kind of just like winding down. So, yeah. Sorry for making your alerts ping off in the middle of the night.
Oh, it doesn't.
I don't hear them. No,
I don't hear them. I just feel bad for you.
Yep.
Man.
That's how I always feel. I'm like, what? You're making me look bad. First of all,
don't feel bad.
That's a little, just a me problem. But, dude, yeah, get with the program. You're old.
No, I'm 38, but yeah, I feel like I'm 58. No, I don't really. I don't.
Simon, what did you do this week?
Work.
All right. Well, there you go. Are you feeling better? Are you feeling better this week from last week?
Yeah. So the other thing, I was talking to somebody else about this the other day, but the other thing that happens when you're not well is getting on with work is quite challenging. You should just have the time off, right? You should have a sick day or something. Just recuperate, give your brain a chance to recover, and not try and just plow on with work. Because that's that's just a bad thing to do. You're not giving your body a chance to, get over whatever it is that's happening to you. But when you've got a lot on, and I've got a lot on, you still, I try to do a little bit, and I just find it's just so difficult. And then pressure mounts because you're like, I need to get all of this stuff done. So then, it's like, I need to just get well. Let's take medications. Let's do all the things. Like, just try and get well. It's really bad cycle. I think the pressure that we can put ourselves under sometimes to just get things done despite, problems. Yeah.
That's I have over the last probably 5-ish years really had to focus on, with my back issues and with other stuff too, just like focusing on drawing the line between work and home, right? I remember, so I think probably a lot of us, I started working from home before it was cool at COVID in like 2010 or something, right? 2011. And a lot of people would be like, they'd make the comment like, oh, it must be nice. You sit at home and watch Netflix all day. And it's like, no, I have the opposite problem. I don't stop working at 5 p.m. like everybody else does. And that led to the back issues, actually, because I would just sit there and work until 2 a.m, get up at 7 and plow away. So I've had to, it's a process. It's a process of understanding. It's a process of being actually honest with yourself and people you already have relationships with, because you have to set boundaries. And that sometimes that's difficult with people that you already know, but it makes you wiser for new relationships that you go into. Work, I'm talking mostly work relationships, but to say, look, I'm just going to be honest. This is what I need and what I want, and either you can provide that or you can't, and we can work with each other or we can't, and just wait for the right opportunities. And sometimes that tests your patience and your bank account and your stress levels, and is it actually worth it or is it not? And but I could talk a lot about that and probably say that for another time.
Yeah, I think so. For me this week, it's just been a case of catching up with some of the stuff that I've been a bit slower on last week. So it's a bit frustrating because it does mean like I haven't been to the gym this week. I hadn't been the week before because I wasn't well. I haven't been this week, so now I'm like, I haven't had the same like energy levels this week. And I've still had the pressure of like getting all of this stuff done that I want to get done. But the good news is it did make loads of progress on it. So it's come off, and maybe next week I'll go to the gym. Maybe.
You'll do it. I'll be your gym buddy. I'll be your accountability coach. Or everybody on Twitter or Blue Sky, just ping Simon. Let's invite the world to ping you like, hey, did you work out today? You just get these notifications over and over.
Bro, why didn't you go? Go,
bro.
Pics or it didn't happen.
I can't take pictures. So I go to this, I don't really go to the gym, in the classic sense of,
You look like it.
Yeah, sure. We do this like HIIT class, which is a boxing thing. And it's really fun, actually. I really enjoy it. The class that I normally go to is full of people who are at least 40.
Nice. And you get to hit them.
No. We're just hitting bags.
You're
it's
saying
like a routine.
High intensity interval training, not boxing HIIT.
Right? Yeah, we're still like wearing gloves and punching a bag and stuff. And it's basically just like organized dance class. It's just music and everybody has to do the same moves to the same beat, and then but it's fun. I like it. The worst part about it is that they take out money from my bank account every month for the privilege. Like I could literally buy a bag and do it at home, but
you don't have you don't have all the other people there. It's totally
true.
Good. That's what you're paying for,
and they're all paying too. It's amazing. Isn't it? Like that's a good business model.
That is a good business model.
No, but the class is really good. The trainer that usually running the class that we do, he's really fun, even though I don't understand a word he says because he's Spanish and he's just shouting all these random words. And then there's occasionally he's not Mexican. No. Anyway, but for any Spanish listeners, Shane is not that ignorant. I promise you.
I don't know about that. Wait, andale
I
is
don't know.
Spanish,
Actually,
right?
I'm saying that as a joke because I don't know if
I was
they
going to
do
say,
say
wait a minute. I do
andale.
speak Spanish, actually. Andale is that translates in Spain
Yeah,
Spanish
it
and
does.
Mexican Spanish. See,
Yeah,
vamos.
I'm sure it does. The yeah, so it's like we've got like this rapport, because I don't really speak his language, he doesn't really speak my language, and whenever he sees me, because I'm not always there regularly like everybody else, it's like regular a couple of times a week, and I'll skip a couple of weeks, and he'll go, Simon. And it's like walk in front of everybody, and I'm like, oh my gosh, just need to get in, do this thing, get out, and cry in a corner because I'm in pain now for 2 days.
And you looked at your bank account.
Yeah, and then be like, oh, it's just pain after pain after. But it's good. It makes me feel better.
Stronger.
Endorphins and all that.
The palm tree's roots are deeper because of the storms that knock it over, or try to knock it over. So
yeah,
that is the pressure that makes it stronger. So philosophical. It's Friday. Philosophical Friday.
and it does improve my what's the vocabulary in Spanish. I mean, I know saco, for example.
Nice.
Which is bag.
Yeah, saco. I've been called that before.
And well, I'm not going to give everyone a Spanish lesson. There are other words that I know. I promise.
Simon.
Yeah, that's a good one. Coincidentally, very similar to the English. Thank goodness.
That's funny. Shane, can we hear about your week? How you doing, man?
Yeah. Good. For those watching or listening to the saga of me trying to find projects and work, Simon, give me a recommendation or kind of a referral to another gentleman, and we were both we talked a couple times, and I did a little project to show him what I can do, and we kind of got married this morning. Actually, we're in agreement, and I don't have to look for work for the foreseeable future. So
nice.
Amazing.
That's a big load off my shoulders. That's a big one. I was telling my girlfriend that the last 3 weeks, I think I haven't had any billable hours. I did some projects right before that, and they all just wrapped up. And it's like over the last 3 weeks, I was really like observing myself and the way that I feel and the way that I approach things, and not jumping right into finding a thing just because it can pay me money, but just like, look, this is what savings is for. This is what networking is for. This is an opportunity not to do things how I used to do them, or like get rid of some bad habits and pick up some new good habits. And so I feel like I kind of passed a little test in life or something. Like I just feel like this is really good. It's a good relationship. And I have to give a plug to Laravel. So it is 10:27 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, Friday, October 25th. Today at noon. Now I'm not going to say too much here, but I have an interview at noon. I'm not going to take it, but this gives an opportunity to anybody else that's on Laravel. I was approached. I got an email the other day from Laravel. It still says Laravel on the email, by the way. Yeah, whatever. Someone was like, "Hey, Shane, we came across your profile, and we'd like to see your resume and your like a project you've done that you can share, or a gist or something." And so I was like, "Sure, why not?" And I sent it in, and they came back like the next day. And I'm approached all the time on LinkedIn for like, hey, we're looking for a senior Java developer. Are you interested? I'm like, we're really interested. We saw your profile and want to offer you Java job. And I'm like,
we saw your profile, but we didn't look at your profile.
Didn't look at it, right? Yeah. So I'm thinking it's kind of along those lines, but it wasn't. It seems like I didn't respond immediately. She said that the hiring manager is interested, and they want to. She's going to do like a pre-kickoff something, get on my calendar link, and find a slot where we can talk for 15 minutes and go from there. But they're interested in hiring. So I didn't respond right away because I was busy. And then she was like, hey, just following up yesterday. I was like, this is a real person. So it's this is Laird Devs is actually a legit non-spammy sort of and I'll see. I'm doing this more for like content actually, and for like for a plug for Laird Devs, and see like how good this is and what actually is going on here. She could have spammed everybody on Laird Devs. I have no idea, but and they might, but maybe they're hiring 100 developers. Who knows? So big plug for Laird Devs.
Maybe you should work that into your interview a little bit. Be like, by the way, how was your experience with the
Thank you.
Laird Devs? How many people have you reached out to, et cetera, et cetera?
Good. Yeah, interview them. Flip the script, right?
Yeah.
So
and if you don't want it, give me a name drop.
That's actually an interesting. That's an interesting problem actually to solve there, because if you know somebody who's also on Laradevs, you could just like link their profile and say like, hey, did you find this person? And they might have already connected to them, but they might not have done. You know, and then it might be like a nice little, I don't know, like maybe a referral, like an officially tracked referral where you could, everybody in that little triangle could know the connection there. And that kind of carries a little bit more weight, right? Because if they interview you and they like you, but then you say, actually, no, but I know somebody else, then it's immediately like a warmer referral than them just finding someone random, at random through the search and stuff.
That's just like, because you watched Breaking Bad, check out these other shows that or because you bought, whatever on Amazon, here are other products that you're going to be interested in.
Did you see Aaron Francis did a video this week about using AI to do related articles on his blog?
No.
And he saw the first bit of the video where he reveals like how my related articles work currently, and it's literally just select like 5 posts from his blogs
random.
And in random order. It's just like they're not related.
I mean, they're all from the same author, so
yeah.
So those 2 things are cool. And then I was like, so I did something earlier in the week. What did I do? And it's like, oh yeah, I flew for the first time since February. I went up with an instructor because it's been a while.
How was it?
It was everything I hoped it would be and more. There was no wind, so that makes everything easier. We did a bunch of maneuvers. I nailed all of the maneuvers within ACS standards. So, I mean, it wasn't all exactly perfect, but it was all within ACS. Like I would have passed the check ride with the same performance that I did. So it was really good. Nice. I came back and did 3 touch and go landings. The last one was a full stop, but perfect landings right on the 1,000-footers, dead center. I mean, I nailed my speeds. Anybody that speaks plane knows how, just how you have to do all that stuff. So it was everything I wanted to do and more. And I'm excited to go up. I'm thinking about going back up Sunday or maybe Monday. Nice. Definitely within the next week, I'm going to go up again and get some more airtime because I need it. It's invigorating, reinvigorating.
Let me know if you want to come north.
We could coordinate something, actually. We'll do that. It's not that far.
Only like 15 minutes from my house, so I could be there in a jiffy.
From Concord. I would do from Monroe, but probably.
Well, I just mean if you wanted to make a trip to come and stop at me.
Gotcha.
And then, I mean, we could go
somewhere else.
And then
I'll just
using it as your halfway point.
I'll just wave at you and then just take off.
They're perfect.
And
then I'll just be standing there trying to hitchhike onto a plane and you'll just zoom by.
You gotta flash the leg, Hey.
Please do that.
Let's get that on video.
Yeah. And when are you going to do intercontinental?
Canary Islands. Well, I was going to do the closer airports within the next week or so, but I'm going today to Canary Islands. So I'll be there for lunch. Someone's
Well,
done. It's 5 o'clock somewhere, right?
yeah.
I'm not positive, but I don't think the planes that Shane flies could get him there. So he'll need to get some ratings and some bigger, faster aircraft to make it that far. That's a lot of water to cover.
Actually, they can.
What?
Believe it or not, believe it or not,
No.
someone's done a world around the world in a 172.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Like you're going to go Arctic Circle
Yeah.
and then back down.
Yeah. That's how you do it. And actually, even if you're in a better plane, a faster plane, you're not going to go, unless you're in a big airliner jet, you're not going over the ocean. You're going to go over the Arctic Circle.
Yeah.
But that's the fastest way to do it. Anyway. So that was cool.
And a camping stove just in case, you have to land it down somewhere near the North Pole.
Just cook in the plane. No problem.
Oh yeah. No, the tent is like extra warmth.
That's really cool though.
It's good thinking ahead. It's good.
So Shane, does that mean that you're re-instrument
No.
checked, or do you have to do that separately?
No. So there's different rules. Like, all right. So for currency, as just a private pilot. So for me to take up other passengers is really what we're talking about. Mm-hmm. I have to do 3 landings, 3 takeoffs, 3 landings on the runway, preferably. They say like taking off is optional, landing is required because you could, you're going to go up, but you're definitely coming down, For instruments though, that means in order for me to actually legally file an instrument flight plan, I have to do 6 real or simulated instrument approaches. Okay. I have to track that. It's kind of vague, but you have to track and you have to track a flight plan, a path, and you have to do like at least 1 hold, which is a hold is say you're coming in to do an approach in instrument conditions and the airport is like, hey, runway's closed for 20 minutes for some coyote on the field or something like that. A hold is like you just fly in a circle, but it's right. There's, you have to make sure that you're at the right altitude because if you're in a hold, other pilots might be in the same hold. So you have to stay at your designated altitude. They have to stay at theirs. There's like a protected side and a non-protected side. And you have to make sure you're on the right protected side and you have to enter the approach the right way because it's like, are you turning right or are you turning left in this circle? And if you're coming at it from a certain angle, then sometimes you go to a certain point and just do a 180 and come back around, or you fly through it and do like this S turn to come back around it. And like it gets kind of tricky, but no, I haven't done that. And the last time I did it was all simulated, meaning on a simulator, which is also legal, but not preferable. You can get away with doing it on an FAA approved simulator, flight simulator, which costs a lot of money for like a really old computer with a really crappy joystick on it, usually they get very, very elaborate though and very expensive. But no, I'm going to find another instructor. I'm going to use a different plane, a DA-40, a Diamond DA-40, which is a all glass cockpit, which means it's all computers, not the steam gauge. They call them steam gauges, like old fashioned, from the 50s or whatever. Instrumentation, that's when I like to do approach stuff in because it's got a nice autopilot, which makes things easier. It's not cheating, which is my first thought. It unburdens the pilot. It gives them you can get very, very task saturated doing all that stuff. Yeah. It's a lot to do. So the more help you can get, the better. And so I'll do that at some point. I think I have until the end of April to get my 6 approaches in. I'm sorry, the end of January to get my 6 approaches in. And I'll do that for sure. And then last night I went to the PHP Upstate in South Carolina. So it's about 2.5-ish hours from me to drive to this. I went to the one in July, which is right before Laracon. And Daniel Colborn spoke about verbs. He kind of practiced some of what he was going to do at Laracon. with us, which was really cool. And last night it was Alex Six, who's on the Zillow team, the Zillow group. He works for Ario. But he's also, I forget his exact title. He did say it, something product relations or something for Filament, which is a very cool up and coming. I say that, but it's been around for a few years now. I'm sure most people know about Filament. If you don't, go to filamentphp.com and take a look. Or check out my other YouTube channel and watch some videos I did on, beginner courses for it. But it was really cool. I actually learned a few things. I mean, you can get very in depth with all of the different stuff you can do inside of Filament. But even from like just a high level, I was able to ask some good questions and got some good answers. And we even came up with an idea that I might do a pull request for to make table columns resizable, which doesn't exist right now. The tricky part is you have to store that information for the user in the database, and Filament doesn't really do anything like that currently. It works with your existing data in your existing database tables, but so it might be crossing some lines or stepping on some toes. It could at least be a plugin, but I think that he's interested in getting that into core at some point. So might be a cool challenge to work on. But it was a good night.
Are they resizable on the front end manually right now, or
no,
not
at all?
Could that almost just be a like front end only implementation using local storage or something like that, instead of it being a setting where like you're defining in your Filament resource that you want this table column to always be this width? It's just sort of like let the user drag it, and then as they've made a selection, that gets stored in their particular browser's local storage, and the next time they load the page, it references that, which is kind of like how Nova works whenever you expand or collapse sub resources of a resource. It just keeps track of which ones you have open or closed, and that helps with additional API fetches. But it's all front end. None of this gets stored in the database because it's like a per user per browser setting.
I guess that's a good point.
Yeah, sorry, I was just going to say I can see that being useful on the client side, and definitely like implementation wise a bit easier. But yeah, I kind of think that you would want both, because in some cases you definitely want to set the column width, right? A certain, maybe you can do that already. I don't know. I haven't explored that.
Yeah, I don't
know.
But
like you can't, like the starting point for everyone is always like something that meets the design requirements or the content or something that you've got. And then it can also be adapted by the user.
Something else to just consider that I've seen done that I like quite a bit is, instead of specifying absolute widths, you just sort of can give instructions that you want a particular column to take up more space. Like give that column the ability to be rendered as a single line of text, and so increase its width. It's almost like a flex property, right? Where you can tell it like this particular column is allowed to grow, but these other ones I want to stay pretty concise. They can word wrap, etc. And so instead of it literally being, okay, this is 80 pixels, it's just like, give this or these columns room to grow while other ones kind of dynamically shrink a little bit. But then you could have client side an actual, this user manually drug this column to this particular width, and that's what they wanted. So no idea how you do that, but seems like it would be.
My dad was doing a project, and that this came up, and like he was like, "Well, data tables can do this. Why can't we do it in Filament?" And it's like that's when you start saying those kinds of words, them's fighting words, right? So like, we'll figure this out. I think my first thought was to like store it in the database, but I think it does make more sense to store it on the client, because if you're going to a different client, you're going to have a probably different width screen, and then you can adjust differently for that. So
and different users will want different columns to be different widths. I mean, we get this all the time with my business partner because we're both interfacing with the same admin panel, and he's looking at certain columns and wants all of that to be really data dense. And then there's other things I want. So the ability for us, our browsers to
for sure
spec it differently is really nice.
Per user. Yeah, I would do that definitely on a user. There would be, if it was in the database, it would be some way to associate user ID to this specific resource table, right? Because each table will be different. There will be different number of columns and all that stuff. So,
can you remind me what Alex's talk was actually on last night?
It was kind of a primer of what Filament is and what Filament is not, and he went over. And I think no one's ever said this out loud that I've heard, at least, but just thinking about Filament as a toolkit more than a dashboard for Laravel apps, because you can use all these components individually, right? You can just use, if you're doing a tall stack anyway, you can do just the tables or just the forms or just the actions. And he went over he showed everything within the context of being inside of a panel, but any one of these can be, if you just have a tall stack, if you're using Livewire now and Tailwind now, because it is opinionated on the, which is overrideable, but it's a little tricky about the design, then you can just say, hey, this component uses a form, and here's the query that you need to, this is where things are getting saved or whatever, which is really cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess just generally it was a intro, and there were several people there that didn't know anything about Filament. So it was really, I was cool. When he got done with the talk, and I was about to ask, but Bogdan, who runs the meetup, he's like, I know the answer to this, but could you just tell everybody how much does Filament cost? Because everyone's sold on it at this point. I was like, oh, it is free and open source. And it's like, whoa, let me sign up now. There's no sign up, man. Just install it, Yeah, it's really cool. It's really cool.
You said at the beginning, it's up and coming. Do you know how many downloads it's had?
No, not off the top of my head. How many?
6.6 million.
That's it. It's up and coming. Up and coming.
Dude, it's doing friggin' hockey stick graph on packages. It's mental.
That's crazy.
How many stars does it have on GitHub? I think there's a lot.
Yeah, I'd imagine there's loads. I don't know.
But yeah, it is absolutely fantastic. It was one of those that I had been using Nova a lot, and then I started using Filament, and it's got an API that is incredibly intuitive.
18.7 thousand stars.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. So very easy to get up and use. I think Alex has mentioned a little bit that they're going to try to work some more on the documentation to help explain a few concepts a bit better, which I think would be helpful. But it is incredibly productive, almost like meta framework around but toolkit. I like that toolkit for Laravel, and you can get up and going with lots of different things really quickly.
He pointed out specifically Nova and Statamic. Statamic is a CMS. Mm-hmm. He's like, now can you use Filament to build a CMS? 100%, no problem. But and kind of watch what I say here, but also don't. It doesn't. What am I? Who cares? He was and then he said Nova is, and he showed one of Taylor's tweets about Nova is a dashboard, an admin dashboard. Yeah. Can you build an admin dashboard with Filament? 100%. But you can also be used on the front end just to display forms, actions, notifications, etc. on your public facing part of your website. You can use Filament. So he was doing these comparisons, we are not this and we are not this. Can you build both of those things with this? 100%. Both of those things cost money. This can build anything and more, and it's free. So I was like, he didn't say that out loud, but that's kind of what I heard, Yeah. It's kind of cool. It is kind of cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
It is good. I think, just the Nova comparison is like the most obvious one, because I think probably most people are building filament apps and building admin panels of some form.
Yeah.
And I think Taylor's said quite clearly, like this isn't meant for like user basic admin panels. Like you're not building your product in Nova. You're building an admin panel that you use, or the people that, the client uses to manage their product, manage records in their database through some nice UI with good rules and accessibility and all of that kind of thing. And that's fine. But, when you're using Filament and you can do all of these things, I think it's kind of tricky, because just to be clear, I'm doing that on Laravel, right? The product uses some of the components on the user facing part, and it's convenient because they're nice. The challenge is they don't always fit really well with the aesthetic that you want. And I think you've touched on it already, Shane, that they're kind of difficult to style. And it's not just aesthetic, it's also function. I'm thinking like the classic case in my head is the selector, like the select to style drop down, there's like the searchable multi-box, whatever, omni-box type thing. And it's a little bit quirky, like there's some keyboard controls that you'd expect to have, you tab and then up and down and then hit return or whatever. They don't all work the way that the standard like select box affordances work. And then kind of the search box appears below the actual field, and the field fills with the option that you've selected, and all of these kinds of things that are just like, some people go, I don't like that. Like I want it to look a different way. And like, it's almost more work to make what is there behave the way that you want it to, rather than just like, well, I'll use shad cn something, if they've got, I don't even know if they've got an equivalent thing, but I've never used it. I just know that it's there. And then there's also, I'm interested to know, like, did Flux come up at all in the conversation?
No.
Interesting. Because in some ways they're also competitive. And I think Caleb has kind of potentially touched on this a little bit in the past, like he's wanting to build this paid for premium component library. And then there's like a component library as well within Filament, it's like 30 components, or maybe not quite that many, essentially, that you can just use. And I think he's like sort of sweating the little details on making these components work really well, like individually, where it feels like the Filament components have just kind of come out of, well, we're building panels, and so we need forms, and if we've got forms, we're going to do like drop downs and calendars, date time fields, that kind of thing.
Flux actually was mentioned, so I misspoke. He gave a shout out to Caleb and talked a little bit about selects, and was like, he did way more work than what we did on the Filament side. It's very difficult to do all the stuff with everything, right? And he did say that like they did way more over there than what they had done, something to that effect. So I don't want to say no, and then anyone hearing this is like, I did too. Twitter war.
No, we're not on Twitter anymore.
Oh, Blue Sky War. That sounded weird.
Yeah, it does
a little bit.
So I have a tidbit here. It's a technical tidbit from Steven, and I want to read this, and then I have some questions about it. Okay. Steven writes in and asks, this is Stephen Fox, longtime listener of the show. Strategies for gracefully limiting the execution time of queued jobs or console commands. That mainly comes from looping over stuff. This is something that comes up from time to time, and I'm curious if you guys have any strategies I haven't thought of. The main premise. Suppose you have a queued job that needs to loop over a ton of records and do something with each of those. For example, a job to send email newsletter campaign. This job will find the relevant subscribers for the newsletter and then dispatch individual jobs to prepare the email and send it through an ESP. I'm not a big sports guy, but
Email service provider.
Thank you. Thus, this send newsletter job will have to loop through thousands of subscriber records, and that will take an unknown amount of time. So how do you gracefully limit this execution time? Laravel and PHP can be configured to limit the runtime in a forceful manner, but that causes the job to fail. In an ideal world, time limit would approach and the loop would stop early while subsequently releasing the job back onto the queue for it to be processed again. Just curious if you guys have had to deal with this before, and if so, have you dealt with it? I have my own strategy that I can explain, but hoping you guys have input as well. My first question is just to get an understanding, I guess. So you're saying if there's for this example, there's some query that could take, we'll just call it a minute to execute this query. And because it's taken a minute, you don't want it to take a minute? That's where I get lost, I guess. Like, what's the importance of the time here? All right, so explain a little better.
Yeah. Okay. So the real thing here is that you've got a job, and the purpose of the job is to loop over probably an unknown, but just imagine a really large number of things, probably model records. And for each of those, it's going to do something to take some amount of time. And so, like, each of those might be very, very short, but you're trying to do this. In my example, you're finding all of your subscribers. So if you have 100,000 subscribers, you're going to loop through those. And then for each of those, you're going to dispatch a separate job that says, hey, please compile the HTML for this email for this particular subscriber and send it through SES. But I mean, that's just dispatching a job. So it's very fast on the individual subscriber, but you're trying to do this for hundreds of thousands of subscriber records. And you kind of want to control how long this master, like, subscriber dispatching individual job will execute for. Because I don't want it to run like literally indefinitely. And I would have to like specify in PHP configs that I want to allow a script to run a certain amount of time before the process would get killed. Or I'd have to configure Laravel and the queue configuration itself to allow a job to run that long. And so what I think, if I'm remembering about this correctly, the really tricky part of this is the ability to be in the middle of a loop and to identify that, I have actually been executing for a certain amount of time. I should probably stop at this point and like gracefully handle the fact that I have completed some work, but there is more to do. So I want to re-dispatch this job so that it can be run again gracefully until we've gone through all of the records that we need to loop through. And if like you're in 100% control of all of this, you can kind of just be like right in the middle of your loop. You can just say like referencing some date time when you started a timer, right? When the job got going, and you can just say, oh, okay, well, I've been running for 55 seconds. I don't want to go over a minute because that's what my configurations will like hard limit. So I'm just going to stop at this exact iteration cycle, redispatch this job. It'll get picked up 5 seconds later, and all of this will keep going again. But where this gets more tricky is when you're not in control of like all of the processing within that for loop. And it's difficult to basically tell in code that, my timer hit. Now I need to literally break, semicolon, like get out of the loop. Right? So yeah.
Can I ask like another supplementary question before kind of going into what like we go into answers or solutions? Is it that you've got like a hard limit on time where something, like a real world problem, something is happening in the real world that means I don't want to send these emails anymore? And is that constant? Like, is it always at, say, 12 a.m.? Or is it like changing? Is it like variable across when that kind of threshold happens over time?
I wouldn't say that is really a concern, at least in the situations where I've needed to use this. So like another example of where I ran into this was doing stuff with Pinkery. And whenever we initially launched the ability to include hashtags within a post, I needed to go through all prior posts that had occurred on Pinkery, try to parse out the hashtags, and then store those as a new hashtag record within a hashtags table. I had no idea, because I don't have direct access to the database or an admin panel. I really had no idea how many posts we'd be going through, how many of those would have hashtags, and all of that type of stuff. And I didn't even really know what the server configuration was for PHP scripting time, etc. So I just kind of wanted to let Nuno run this and just say, hey, by the way, I don't really know what all of this. So I just kind of limited it to 30 seconds for each go, and it'll just stop after the things hit 30 seconds, and then it'll try again. But you're not going to get Slack notifications or whatever because jobs were failing because it exceeded a runtime. And so that was another situation where I had no idea if it was going to take 10 seconds to loop through these things or 10 minutes. Not that that really mattered. I just simply wanted the ability to, be in the middle of this loop and kind of gracefully get out of it and then redispatch the same job so that it could pick this up again. And it's a little bit different than I think a slightly more direct, but I don't want to say not quite as graceful of an implementation as you could say in the job that, look, I know that I could do this for 500 records and it'll finish within a time that I'm fine with. So in my job, I'm only going to go through 500 records. I stop. If it turns out that I run another count query and I determine that there are more to do, then I can just redispatch the job or have something else in place that will get the job back into the queue again.
So it's not that there's a real world threshold in time that you're worried about crossing. It's literally just, I don't want this job to run potentially indefinitely or for an unknown amount of time. I want to be able to stop it kind of at any point and then be able to restart it from where it left.
Yeah. While leaving the Laravel job settings intact that make sense outside of this particular concern. Because as I sort of mentioned in our card here, you in theory could use the fact that Laravel will limit runtime of a job to a certain amount, and then it will throw the whatever max runtime exceeded exception or something like that truly fails the job. Then you could specify the max number of attempts you want to let Laravel try the job, or the max time, try until, I can't remember what it's called right off the top of my head. So that it'll just perpetually continue to try. That is also, I think, an option here, but at least in my case, I almost want to handle those two things slightly differently, where I want to leave the max exceptions I allowed, the max attempts I allowed, the max duration in time for that job to be relevant, for true, just these are the upper limits of what, just kind of protecting the true boundaries of things really going to crap with this job. And I want Laravel to handle those by truly failing it, and I get a Slack notification.
Yeah.
Versus this, which is I just know that looping through all the subscribers is going to take more than a minute. And so I want to gracefully, without throwing any of this stuff or like truly failing the job, I just want to gracefully limit how long it runs inside of this loop and then kick it back off again.
Yeah. Okay. I think I've kind of got it, and I've got some thoughts, but Shane, have you got anything else that you want
to? Yeah, I mean, so like, I could think of a couple ways to avoid the problem, but that doesn't solve the question you're actually asking, which would have, there could be other reasons to ask kind of the same question. So I could think of like, well, why don't we just run a query and cache that query? And now we just hit the cache when we want to do this later. And kicking even 100,000 jobs into a queue is pretty quick. That shouldn't take very long at all to a million records. Even I don't think if you have that query already set and it's in memory, you could make it kind of small too. Maybe just an array of IDs or something like that. You could kick all of those off pretty quickly. There's also in a past life job, whatever, we used lock files, which was really just a file.lock, or we would timestamp them or something. So now to time string or to date time, whatever, .lock, and then we would check for the existence of that file, and if so, there would be some JSON data in there that we could use to implement this sort of thing, or just delete the file if you're done with it, or you can do that kind of stuff. But then I just kind of looked on Google, not on AI, and I saw somebody write something about, this is just live off the cuff here. You can use the queue : looping event listener to pause an entire queue or connection, not just an individual job class. Unlike other methods, this will not put each job in a cycle of pop/requeue while the queue is paused, meaning the number of attempts will not increase. It kind of sounds like what you're talking about. And then so they linked right to the docs. This is as of 5.8. And the docs say on 5.8. And so I haven't looked at recent versions if this has changed at all, but using the looping method on the queue facade, you may specify callbacks that execute before the worker attempts to fetch a job from a queue. For example, you might register a closure to roll back any transactions that were left open by a previously failed queue, is the example they give. And there's a little code snippet there on Laravel. I'm not sure if that exactly answers, but I think it's along the right lines of what you're kind of talking about here. Or I'm wrong. And that's possible. Maybe I'm wrong.
I didn't know that existed.
No, maybe it's so you can look.
Yeah, I'd have to look into that a little bit more.
Job events inside of queues.
So I've got a few other approaches that have like been in my head. I don't know if they're like, do you want to respond, Stephen, though, first to what Shane suggested?
I don't have much of a response for that particular one, so go ahead, Simon.
Oh, okay. So I think the first thing that I'd be thinking about is like, well, if I don't have mechanisms to just control this thing, how can I make it so that it happens within a reasonable time frame? How can I bring the job time, the individual job time down, and the overall time for this exercise down? So a couple of simple approaches, obviously, like the performance of an individual job, and then parallelizing as much of it as possible. Like, can I have 5 workers? Can I have 10 workers plowing through this list rather than just one doing everything sequentially? I guess the other thing there is, on what I'm not super clear on, is it just a single job that's chugging away, or is it multiple jobs?
In most of the cases that I've actually done this, it's like I typically break it up into 2 or more jobs, and it is like this one central job that needs to find all of the records that need additional processing. And so that one job is responsible for chunking through a query and then submitting for that extra work to be done on each individual record.
And when you say submitting that extra work, you mean creating a job for that individual record?
Typically by dispatching, yes, a separate job.
Okay.
There are some
Right.
simple circumstances where, you could just do the processing literally right there and not handling that in a separate job.
Yeah.
But for the most part, this is like, they're multiple jobs. And so there's like the job that actually does the work. And then there's this other job that is just from my database, figure out everybody or everything that needs that processing and get it into the queue.
So, I mean, like that, the parent job, let's say, the one that triggers all these other jobs.
The orchestrator. Yeah.
Yeah. That it might not even be a job. It's only like if you want it to happen off process in the background, because then it's not blocking your main application or something, right? So, but yeah, in principle, kind of what you've got there, if you think about it, is a batch, like it's all of these things together as one thing. And I haven't used it because I've never actually needed it, but there is batching available in Laravel queues and job work. And I've got a feeling I would be very surprised, let's say, if that didn't have a way to kind of inject yourself into the middle and kind of get a snapshot of where things are at, and then be able to like gracefully stop the batch and then maybe pick it up again.
Potentially. I do use batching in some of my applications, and I don't know about, I guess, with what like the actual problem. And again, this is like not that big of a problem. Like I already have something I do all the time for this, but it's not something I need to handle during the processing of these individual jobs or anything like that. Like whenever you create a batch with Laravel, that's almost just a wrapper around all of those individual jobs and assigning them to a database record that represents, hey, all of these individual jobs are a part of this single batch. And it allows you to do a handful of additional things like cancel that batch, and then each subsequent job would be able to check that the batch was canceled. I should just stop what I'm doing and move on from there. But again, that's just by batching, that's not really going to change the fact that you still need to compile all of these individual jobs and get them processing or onto a queue or whatever that might look like. So, and to even give you guys a more fuller context where this like really comes into play is combining this with the scheduler. So, imagine every minute you had the scheduler running a command or a job that is to do this orchestrating job to like figure out what needs to be sent and then shipping it off. And so like you're kind of wanting to constrain the runtime of that to within that minute. Because like in the next minute, the scheduler is going to
try to
boot up a subsequent job. And there are things you can do for making sure a job is unique on a queue or a lot of things like that as well. So just trying to handle.
Having done some of that kind of stuff before and seen what happens when the scheduler kind of trips over itself, I would say you definitely you're going to need some way of saying, I picked these things up, So I'm not talking about the queue acknowledging that it's picked up a job, the worker has picked up a job to do, but actually on the records themselves that you've got a way to say, identify, I'm being processed for this thing. I don't know, it doesn't have to be on the record. Like it could just be in a cache, that you check the specific cache value to see if it exists and that it's like true or whatever. And your query that gets records in these like chunks, then it does it in chunks. It doesn't just try and get everything every time, right? Because it's going to go, oh, I see that there's this information here about these ones, which I can use to filter these out because I know that they've already been handled for processing, even if they haven't necessarily been processed yet. So it's like, I think that's where it ultimately comes down to is you need to capture a bit more data than maybe you want to, but fundamentally it's going to make it easier to reason about and understand the state of where things are at a given moment. Like if for some reason when the scheduler kicked off the job this one time, it failed horribly and all of these records look like they've been picked up, but they haven't really, it's like, or we just don't know where they're at. And actually, if when the scheduler does the initial query to find the relevant records for that version of the batch, it also keeps a track of like, not only have I picked these up, but also then when they're done, I can tell you when they're completed, like the job is done. Beyond looking at the jobs table or like, completed jobs by default just get thrown away. So you don't even have a record of that, right? You actively need to have done something with the data that you can use as a signal to say this thing's completed correctly or incorrectly, and then decide what to do next. And then you won't have problems with like the scheduler kind of stepping on a previous iteration's toes or whatever.
Okay.
Do you want to hear what ChatGPT has to say about it?
Let's hear what ChatGPT's got for us.
I just copied and pasted your synopsis here. The first few things I don't think really makes sense, but it did compliment you. This is a great scenario, Stephen, and one where graceful handling of execution time in queued jobs can prevent a lot of headaches, especially with PHP's constraints. Here are a few
how
approaches.
ChatGPT does this stuff. Like it's this little like, let me help you feel good about yourself before I tell you the answer.
No, that's interesting. So I'm not going to read through all of this because it gave me quite a bit, but it gave a few approaches that you might not have tried. One is a soft timeout check with a loop break. You can set a soft timeout at the start of the job based on now add seconds with a threshold. For each iteration, check the current time against the threshold. If the threshold is reached, break the loop, release the job back onto the queue. 2, chunk processing with offset tracking. I'm not going to go through that. It's kind of the same idea, but you're just increasing a chunk size instead, and you're skipping records. The last one, there's another one here, using event-driven dispatching with a recursive queue job. Alternatively, split the logic into multiple jobs with a recursive approach. Each job processes a portion, dispatching itself again if there are more records to process. This can work well with an event system where each job triggers the next. None of those are as interesting as this last one that it suggests. Using Redis locks for coordinated timeout control. If you're working with Redis, you can set a Redis lock with a TTL that keeps track of the job's execution. Upon reaching the TTL, the job can stop, release the lock, and then redispatch itself. So I wasn't aware of that. So now I'm looking into like, tell me more about Redis locks. By the way, I love bagels with locks.
Well, anyways, to I guess just kind of start to wrap this up a little bit. The way that I handle this, it essentially does come down to the two like options. The very, very simple one, which I already mentioned, is that if you're in full control of the loop, you can just check for a time and then literally use break, semicolon, and you're pretty much done. The other one, if you have more like nesting to your code and perhaps it gets broken out some. For example, you're pulling in like an action class, and that action class is responsible for doing some of this looping or something like that because there's more orchestration to do. Then I use a strategy that I picked up from Spassy with their mail coach source. I hope I'm not like divulging anything super secret here, but whatever, it's a very simple tactic. And I just wrap this stuff in a try catch block so that no matter how deep I am in the call stack and I need to handle this, I can throw a specific exception that's basically like, time limit exceeded. And then that exception will bubble all the way back up to my actual job. And then I can handle it from there. So it's almost a way I just using an exception and try catch to be anywhere within the loop and deeper into a call stack and still immediately get myself out of that loop and able to do some stuff.
And do you report back like which iteration in the loop you're at so that you can pick it up from that spot?
Nope, because almost always I set up this stuff where the jobs are, I don't know what the right word is. Idempotent seems like the word I want to be using here, but like the jobs and the queries are set up so that they don't need to know any of this stuff. Every job is like iteration agnostic. And so if you had one run and it got through a certain number of these records, and then a minute later the job tries to run again, it's just using the way I structure these queries to grab only the records that would still need processing. Mm-hmm. It's not going to try to re-grab anything that already had been accomplished. And so they're intrinsically, again, I'm not really exactly sure what the technical term is here, but like, you just don't need to know where you are in an iteration cycle.
They're like a Boolean column or something. So your query is going to find where those are false or something along those lines.
Yeah.
You're only going to find the ones that haven't processed yet, essentially.
Yeah. So, and I mean, I've done this everything from, I sent you guys in Telegram a really simple link to the Pinkery PR I had done just to give a tiny bit of context where I was adding, I think that was the one where I added historic hashtags to the database, but I was doing it directly within a console command so that Nuno could just SSH into the server, run it, but again, not have that like blow up in his face. It would just kind of gracefully end, and it would let Nuno know, hey, by the way, I hit 30 seconds, but there was still more stuff to do. Please rerun me. And again, I mean, this was like, I wanted to get this stuff done in 20 minutes, not some super complicated, okay, let me make a database table to specifically handle this stuff. So anyways, that was a really simple one where I do just break out of a loop. But I was trying to find the actual code where like doing the loop and just breaking it out of that wasn't simple. And I can't remember where this came up in recent work I had done, but it was somewhere. And I can just remember that I had this issue. And so I don't know. I think it'd be kind of interesting if it would be possible to make this a job middleware, potentially. So you could just bring in a job middleware that just says like, I do want to still have my max exceptions set on the job, or max attempts, or the, run until method for like an hour, that's like, I literally don't want you to try this again if I have exceeded, this has been on the queue for more than an hour. But that's like, again, totally separate than just, I have lots of stuff to chunk through. So if you could, have a nice little middleware that would sort of wrap some of this stuff for you in the queue worker, and then it could gracefully redispatch the job for you without truly marking it as a failure, that might be kind of nice. And a lot of this, I mean, this is like extremely technical, and it's partially just because of the way I have chosen to do some things. Like, on Backer Club, I hook into a failed job event, and I do push that to Slack so that I can know about it. And so it's just like one of those little things where, I don't want to necessarily use the hard runtime things for the Laravel jobs to do that, because then I do believe it is a failure and I would be getting unnecessary notifications, or I'd have to add additional, okay, if it's this specific job and it maybe failed because of this, limit it. But then at the other times, it's like, well, if something actually happened where it exceeded the runtime because SES was unresponsive, I would like to know about that, because maybe something needs to be attended to. It's not just, well, I got through 17,000 records and there was 100,000 to do, so I need to just keep going. Anyways, let's not keep dwelling on this.
This sounds like a Steven problem, but it could be a listener problem too. So, like again, we're opening it up. If you've
at the end of the day,
this, then
this is probably a skill issue.
If there's a listener that's got some ideas, comments, concerns, maybe for Steven's mental health, I would understand that. No, I'm just kidding. And trying to solve problems like this can get very tricky, especially when you're dealing with the queues, which I still think is, according to a lot of people I've talked to, it's still like queues are still kind of black box to a lot of people. Been around for a long time in Laravel. Really good documentation, a couple books written about it as well, but it can still, every case is kind of unique and different as to what you're trying to do, and that can create a lot of room for interpretation. And there's a lot of ways to skin a cat, pun intended. No pun intended. No pun involved, actually. There's no cats.
Yeah, I agree. The queue stuff with Laravel is really good and really powerful. And there are, I think, so many things you can do to configure how Laravel, the queue worker, the queue itself, and actual job processing can be performed, that it can be a little bit overwhelming. I think the book, is it Laravel Queues in Action?
Mohammed Said.
Yeah. Who I believe he's the one that wrote most of the implementation for the framework, is really, really good. And so that helped tremendously by really breaking down, okay, like when we handle queues and that the process is actually running, here is how we go from fetching a job from the queue to actually running it and handling a lot of this stuff. And now it's much easier to understand where a bunch of these different configurations are coming into play, and helps you kind of understand the difference between specifying that like a job should be unique versus a job should not overlap, which are like fairly similar things you might want to control, but they do it in a slightly different way, and some stuff like that. And that helps a lot. So I highly recommend giving that book a read to any listeners that do lots of queued stuff.
Any final thoughts, Simon? What does Simon say?
Let's get the hell out of this topic. Is probably what he's thinking.
Yeah. No, I really like this kind of stuff, because I think trying to figure it out is a good exercise for your brain. I think the danger is that there are like so many different ways, as you said, skinning a cat, that you just end up spinning on it for ages. I think you just like the primary thing for me is like pick one and stick with it. Like be consistent in how you approach it. It maybe across projects, certainly within the same project. Don't try and do it different ways if it's, you're solving the same problem. The other thing that I think like it just is sticking in my brain like a cocktail stick is, this whole thing with the scheduler. Like just get it off the scheduler. Don't, like, if you've got to trigger the work from the scheduler, make it trigger a queue job and then let the queue get on with that, And it's just like, then you're probably in the realm of, just letting it run. Let it run and run and run. Like, what's wrong with that? Maybe that's not a bad thing, you know? If it's literally just, I just want to see that stuff's going on, there'll be ways to get some oversight of that. You know, if you had Horizon, for example, if you were using Redis, you might be able to see a little bit more about what's going on with the jobs. But otherwise, you know, it's just kind of like, what's wrong with just letting it go? If there's no real hard stop here, yeah.
I'll try to figure out exactly where this became really sticky, if I can recall, and maybe write a little article on it. And then in a future episode, we can come back and hopefully the light bulbs will go off a little bit more and you guys can truly understand what I'm getting at here, which is, I think, so deep in the weeds technical. Like, you need to be looking at line by line to really understand why I'm even asking this question. So I think that would help for us to have that extra context.
I think we would possibly consider talking about this again. And to get into the real reasons why, may have to visit your childhood a little bit in conversation.
I should have just stayed a mechanical engineer. This stuff is...
Should have stayed at Disney. Nah.
Yeah, right?
On vacay. No, this is interesting. I like cues. I like thinking through this stuff too. And I think this is probably a really interesting thing to bring into the show, is to have like a synopsis of like, let's talk through how we would solve this kind of stuff. And again, invite listeners to contribute their thoughts, ideas, and maybe even their own topics or questions that they would have. That's what we're here for. I think combined, we have probably a year and a half or so of collective experience developing, and it's more than nothing, you know?
Yeah. It's things we've
definitely,
Sorry, go ahead, Simon.
We've definitely encountered at least one problem between us.
Wait,
but yeah,
Simon's on the right, Shane's on the left. One problem between us. Sorry.
I think it would be fun to bring up some of these more like deeper things.
Yeah.
Because I still see so many articles and videos and stuff on learning how to do things in Laravel, but they are still fairly introductory, truly small scoped problems.
Yeah.
And there are some things I've had to tackle where you're getting into, like needing to do processing for millions of records, not 100. The things change significantly. And especially if you've got 1 million records, and for every single one of those, you're going to be doing processing that's making hundreds of other things and taking a very long time for those. And like, how are you orchestrating stuff that is literally, you've got, I've done stuff before where it's like, you've got, I don't want to divulge anything here, but lots and lots of processing going concurrently in parallel for all of this stuff and trying to keep track of where everything is. And it's like around the clock processing to do all of that. And it's just, like truly, I think, complex problems that are not, okay, I can solve this in 20 lines of code to show you for this tutorial, and now we're out.
I'll leave you guys with this little thing,
Whatever.
and then I'm gonna invite Steven to close us out this week. So at the PHP Upstate meetup last night, Mr. Beggs was in town showing off what he's working on for Laravel.com, Laravel Core, which is cloud, and it is looking really good. He promised it was getting released today. Just kidding, Jason. I think that they're rolling it out in batches to smaller like beta testers initially, and then inviting more and more into the pre-release. But I think Q1 next year, early, I think January-ish is what they're shooting for, I think. But there is one thing, and I don't know anything more than, so I can say as much as I know about this because I don't know anything about it, but there's another product Laravel is coming out with that they're going to announce at Laracon AU, which is just a couple of weeks, I think. And it is alluded to inside of inside of Taylor's video. If you go back at Laracon US this year, there are little hints of what it is. And I saw it last night, and he's like, there's a little hint there. You know how Jason talks. I'm like, so it said connect to Nightwatch. There's a little button, and it was on this section that said HTTP traffic. And so it's like, he's like, you see like bars and graphs and, you know, lines and stuff here, it'd be a bunch of data. And he's like, there's some little hint there. You know how he talks, kind of like Elvis. So he's all shook up. So that's all I know. That's all that I know. I don't know exactly what it is. A couple guys took a guess. He's like, maybe, I don't know, could be, I don't know. So, but my guess is it's something along the lines of like a pingdom sort of thing, some way to check some insights into what's actually happening on your website that's not already a Laravel product. Because there's a lot of ways to, like Telescope or Horizon or, you know, stuff like that, where you can see what's going on within your site. But I don't know. We'll find out, I think, in the next 2-3 weeks. So for those listeners that stayed around this long, might be rewarded with a little tease, which isn't actually a reward at all. It's kind of annoying. But on that note, what does Simon say?
That's very interesting. I've heard this name Nightwatch before. Yeah. It makes sense, you know, if they've got, you're talking about a kind of serverless infrastructure, and being able to react to like volume of traffic and that kind of thing and like scale accordingly. So you need that level of monitoring, and that probably needs to be pretty close to whatever hardware is actually running your application and plugged into multiple parts of it, like the database, the queue system, whatever you're using for caching, etc., and be able to respond to all of those things in maybe different ways according to whatever your settings for scaling are. So kind of makes sense to have to build something like that. To put it as a separate product maybe also makes sense if they're looking at cloud being like for hobbyists who, you know, projects might never leave the $5 to $10 a month kind of typical range of usage. But then they clearly want to go after enterprise level platforms using cloud too. So they just need that level of orchestration. So I can see that being like, and that definitely doesn't really exist at the moment within, you know, like as a product that somebody within the Laravel community has built for Laravel people. It's kind of you left to your own devices to figure that out, right? Could be cool. Could be very cool.
Nice.
Well, what do you think, Stephen?
About that specifically?
Simon's beard, which is actually what we're going to talk about next week a little bit. Just grooming in general, but more specifically, you know, what number do you use? That's what I want to know. The listeners need to know what number, what's it called? The guard.
In which part?
We're not going to talk about it today. This is a teaser. Okay.
We're talking about the face, right?
Oh my God. Our poor listeners.
Not anymore.
Oh, man.
Whoa. Wow. All right. Steven, close us out here.
Where do I go from that? Okay.
Don't answer
Thank you,
that
everybody,
question.
for listening. I want to say stay tuned for future episodes, but listener beware, maybe now. I don't know. Brought to you by Steven.
Oh, no.
Well, I tried and that didn't work. All right. Thank you, everybody, for listening. We'll catch you next week.
Don't forget to like, subscribe. Don't forget to, let me try it from the top, cut, break, whatever. Yeah, if you like this, any part of this episode, chances are someone you know might also like it. So go ahead and share this out to the Twitter lands, the X lands, the Blue Sky lands, whoever. And yeah, and don't forget to like and comment. Commenting, I'm interested to see what kind of comes in from the comments now in little reviews. So could be fun. That's it. Thanks, guys. Have a great week.
You too.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.